Thank you very much, Ola. And just to be clear, I like being called an architect of it, but I'm actually more a consumer of it than anything else. And I give appropriate props to the people who did develop it in this presentation. So anyway, just to start off, this is, of course, the history and present of testing in Asterisk. It's a hot topic, it always has been, and so I want to share a bit about it with all of you. So let's look at the Asterisk project's roots to start off with, and you might sort of see why testing wasn't really in place to begin with. Well, Asterisk started off being written as Mark Spencer's personal PBX, and it was only later that, of course, it went, public. And, of course, at that point, it was a hobbyist thing, so it had just a fix-as-you-go attitude, It's just sort of something pops up, you just go along and fix it yourself. And failure, well, I mean, it wasn't being used anywhere real important, so yeah, who cares? I'll just pull the latest CVS head, it might be fixed. But the project evolved.
Were you supposed to tell the real truth?
The project evolves, and so as a result, by the way, I apologize for the photo quality of every one of these slides. Just, yeah, sorry. It starts getting used in places like call centers. It gets used by the government, and it's being used in hospitals. So, in other words, Asterisk functioning means a lot of businesses' source of money. And of course, if Asterisk is not working, then that means their money is going away, and they get really angry. So if you're a business type, you might word this as being mission critical. So when things get to be that stage, we have to do something about, the lack of a testing framework. And so the first things that we did, we still had the, the attitude that, a lot of people who are using this are willing to, upgrade to the new version and test things out for us. So we started putting out betas and release candidates of our software, and we still do that. And the idea is, of course, by putting it out there, people can try it and report problems to us before we actually make a full release. And of course, just last year, Russell made the announcement that we were going to start labeling versions of Asterisk as being long-term support. So people would use those knowing that we would support it for at least 5 years. But the issues that we see is that a lot of people are unwilling to upgrade Asterisk. And the way I have it represented here is they're sticking with the old VHS instead of the cool DVD that we're pushing out because they're running a stable system and they don't want to risk upgrading to something that they don't know is going to work. Also, well, we depended on users of Asterisk to be testing mostly and not the developers, which is problematic. Also, the number of users testing was just not very high. We didn't have very many. Oh, and this is a good one. There are a lot of cases where we would get bugs reported because some behavior had changed. And in some cases, we thought we were actually fixing it. But to those people, no, it was broken. So we needed to know exactly what the correct behavior is. And in some cases, it really just wasn't documented anywhere. And also, I meant to put a slide in there, apparently forgot to. It's issue backlog is another big problem for us. We didn't want to try to devote resources to writing testing stuff because there are 500 open issues in the bug tracker. And so by diverting resources towards testing, that means that issue backlog is just going to get bigger. But eventually, earlier this year, we decided, okay, time to take responsibility. Developers, we need to be the ones testing this. And so Russell Bryant, kind of came to a Digium software dev meeting and he pretty much just said, let's do something. And by the way, this picture has nothing at all to do with this. I just thought it looked really cool. So inside of Digium, we decided to create 2 different types of tests that we use in Asterisk. They are internal testing and external testing. So let's go over internal testing to start off with. First of all, big thanks to David Vossel and Russell Bryant for writing the internal tests. Without them, this probably wouldn't be where it is now. So internal tests, we usually refer to them as unit tests. And they are written with coding in mind. In other words, what we're doing is we're testing the actual C functions in Asterisk. So We do this for things like parsers, decision trees, failure cases, and some examples of some tests that we have written are SIP URI parsing, access control lists, dial plan pattern matching, which is a huge one because we do not want to break that. And we also go low level with things like making sure that when we try to pull file descriptors that what we're using is working, because that can actually get broken between different versions of operating systems. And of course, low level coding aspects like our string field code. And of course, application argument parsing, because we don't want to make it so that when you pass a certain option to dial, it doesn't work anymore. That would be awful. So if you're interested in running internal tests, it's actually incredibly easy to do so. So the first thing you have to do is you have to compile support in for the unit tests. And so you do that in menu select by enabling test framework. And here's some screenshots of how that is done. First of all, here's menu select. So you see I have the arrow there next to compiler flags development. And inside that, there is the test framework down there at the bottom. And by enabling that, that enables code that is defined as being a test to get compiled. And in some cases, there are also some tests that are in their own module, so you have to enable those in menu select as well. So you can find that in the test modules area in menu select, and they're all listed there, and you can enable whichever ones you want. So to actually run the test, then you just open Asterisk like you normally would, and from the CLI, you can execute things in various ways. So you can execute a specific test by doing test execute category and the category and then the name of the test. Or you can run test execute all to just run them all. The test results can be saved in a couple different ways. So you can tell Asterisk CLI to generate plain text results, which look something like this. Or you can have it generate XML results, which look a little bit like this. And of course, from the CLI, you can just get some summaries of tests too. So you can do test show results passed, test show results failed, or of course, test show results all. Just list them all. As far as coding goes for internal testing, I recommend that there's some great doxygen in include asterisk test.h. If you read that, you'll probably have everything you need. And just in case, though, you can look in the test directory at all the examples there in case you want to write some new tests. External testing. I think this is a whole lot more interesting because it's actually testing the components of Asterisk in a more real-world sort of way. More, but not exactly. So we keep scenarios in mind in this case, as opposed to the actual code in C. So for these, we test things like phone calls and application execution and tests with external components. For instance, if we have a test where we want to use SIP-P or PJ-SUA or span DSP or some other sort of external thing that's outside of Asterisk, it goes in as an external test. And of course, with external tests, you can also have multiple Asterisk instances. So some examples of tests that we have in the external tests, we have IAX and SIP calls, AMI commands, transfers, CDR results. That's a big one. That's one of those ones that I was saying earlier where the behavior is not well defined about what's right and wrong. So the tests now, we can just see whether things change or not from when we wrote the test to begin with. We test mix monitor, call pickup, fast AGI, and queues. So the external tests are located in the Asterisk test suite, which you can get through Subversion from this link right here. So the organization of the test suite is kind of interesting. So you can see here I've opened this up in my file browser and took a screenshot. So this is just what it looks like when you look at the test suite. So first of all, there's the runtests.py file. Let me go back. The runtests.py file is what you do to just run all the tests in the test suite. Pretty simple. The tests directory is actually where all the tests are. And here's a look inside the test directory, so you can see that all the tests are within their own individual folder, and or their own directory rather. And in some cases, they may have even more subdirectories for more specific test cases inside. You'll see that we use a YAML configuration. This is inside the test directory still, and we have a test.yaml, which tells the asterisk, the run test.py script, which tests am I supposed to run. And then within each test, you can see here I've brought up the example test. There's a testconfig.yaml, and in this one, we tell Asterisk, we tell which version of Asterisk we require in order to run this test, because of course some features don't exist in older versions. We also have just a plain text description of the test so that people who are looking can see what it is we're actually doing in this. And we also tell it what dependencies we require in order to run the test. And within each test directory, there's a run test executable. And that's what we use to run each actual test. So let's go over the setup here. As far as setting it up is concerned, there's a readme.txt file. You should read it, seriously. There's also a wonderful, wonderful blog post by Leif Madsen that is all about installing the Asterisk test suite. He goes step by step through everything you will need to do in order to get everything that you need in order to run it. It's really wonderful. So as far as the code goes, we have a couple of built-in libraries in the test suite for helping people to write their own tests. First of all, we have AST test, which I've highlighted the directory for it here. And AST test provides helper functions and libraries for writing Lua tests. And that was written by Digium's Matt Nicholson, and he's done a great job of maintaining it, and he even has some self-tests within there to make sure that the library is actually working, so that's really cool. So some examples of tests that have been written in Lua are RFC2833 DTMF detection, SIP-specific channel parameter testing. Every Q test so far has been written in Lua. All of the tests that test manager functionality specifically are written in Lua. Also, tests for handling SIP referrers. Now we also have, you can see here, we have a library for Asterisk testing using Python.